This week, Rob Allen from Threatlocker is with us to discuss insider threats and endpoint security. Then in our topic segment, we discuss a trend away from cloud towards more edge computing and hybrid models. And then finally, we've got two more interviews from RSAC Conference 2025 to share. Matthew Warner, CEO and co-founder of Blumira, discusses the shift from purely threat-centric mindsets to operational resilience. And Yotam Segev, CEO of Cyera, discusses his company's skyrocketing growth with its founding story and its latest release, Adaptive DLP. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Imagine a world where every threat, ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits is stopped before it can even begin. Threatlocker makes that world a reality with a zero-trust approach to cybersecurity. By giving you granular control and every executable in your environment, Threatlocker protects your business around the clock. No more guessing, no more gaps. Just rock-solid protection that keeps your operations running smoothly and your data secure. Discover how Threatlocker's least privilege approach can safeguard your organization against known and unknown threats. Take the first step towards total peace of mind by visiting securityweekly.com/Threatlocker today. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy National Paperclip Day, because why not? I guess they get a...
Is it actually National Paperclip Day?
It is National Paperclip Day today.
Somebody told me it was National Burger Day yesterday. Was I misinformed or was that correct?
Probably. I don't. It's crazy. So we do a different national day every day, and I generally try and pick the most ridiculous one, and this one's pretty ridiculous.
Paperclip is up there. Paperclip is up there.
I'm just gonna
0.3% chance that you're right, though. There's a 0.3.
I'm gonna twist that a little bit to celebrate Clippy today. I'm gonna say it's National Clippy Day. How about that?
Now we're basically all showing our ages by knowing what you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I knew you both would.
I would take a Clippy any day.
All right, this is episode 411, recorded on Thursday, May 29th, 2025, which is also crazy because you won't see it until June 16th. And we haven't even recorded episode 410 yet, which will be next week, live from Identiverse, also with Jackie. And yeah, it's going to be a crazy month. I'm going to be traveling all around the world this month and doing all kinds of crazy pre-records. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Dean of Data Science, the Knight of Neurodiversity, the Watcher of Data Center Waste, Jackie McGuire. How you doing, Jackie?
I am fantastic, but just so you know, some guy who is not very technical at all on LinkedIn told me yesterday that he's looked into the data science waste thing, and it's not as big of a problem as we think it is.
Oh, what a relief. What a relief.
So rest assured that the energy consumption is not what we think it is because some rando on LinkedIn looked it up. So
Sure.
he told me. I was like, that's fascinating.
It'll be fine. Yeah, we're going to use a gas tank's worth of energy to investigate every SOC alert. It'll be fine.
Yeah. It's not that much. Electricity's free, or at least at my parents'
Could I ask
house
a question? Does that count as being mansplained too? Or do we need a whole different category of things for being mansplained, technical things on LinkedIn?
Yeah. I had somebody come into my booth when I was working at a vendor at a trade show one time and start mansplaining a technology that I have 3 patents in.
Wow.
He actually started explaining endpoint detection and response and just happened to be at the SIEM that I wrote a bunch of detections for.
To be a fly on that wall.
Patted him on the head. Yeah. It happens all the time.
Apologize for my gender.
No, your gender's great. It's just, your assumption of the capabilities of other genders that usually is the problem.
No, not mine personally.
Yeah.
The genders, you mean? Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. I just assume that I'm so hot that people assume I must be a booth babe, because there's no way that I can have brains this big and have been blessed with the genetic
Jackie,
lottery.
fortunately, that is not a problem that I have.
Yeah.
Well, see, there you go. You can rely on your brains then, and always be sure why you're in a room.
All right. So this interview is sponsored by Threatlocker, and today we're going to be talking about insider threats and endpoint security. And we've got Rob Allen, Chief Product Officer from Threatlocker, with us today. Welcome, Rob.
Hello.
And
I need to figure out how to woman-splain.
Quick update. Yesterday was, in fact, National Burger Day.
Oh, okay.
And can confirm today is National Paperclip Day.
I did not have a burger yesterday.
All right. Well, I don't have a paperclip today, so
yeah, I don't even know where I could find a paperclip. Usually,
I don't think I have one in my house.
The only ones I have,
looked.
The only ones I have all been straightened out to open CD trays. So that's.
You still have CD trays?
No, but I still have the paper clips that I used to open them.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, they still exist in my junk drawers. But again, something that both of you probably understand having to.
Yeah.
Again, yeah, thank you for aging us all.
Yeah. The question is, how many giant buckets of cables that you can't use anymore do you have? Because I was cleaning out the garage yesterday and I found 3 buckets of just like old ass the VGA monitor cables. It's just
wow.
like ridiculous stuff that I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've moved this through 8 states.
You might need this at some point in the past.
I still have VGA. Yeah. I still have VGA cables, but the SCSI cables are gone. The extremely expensive SCSI cables are gone.
I think I still have at least a couple of those, unfortunately.
Yeah. They were not cheap.
So I moved here from Ireland almost 2 years ago, and that was a great opportunity to cut the proverbial cord with all of my previous cable collection. So now I've got an entirely new cable collection.
Yeah, nothing.
I've got 2 cable collections. I've got a back there cable collection, and now I've got an over here cable collection.
That's awesome.
I don't know if I'm also now, granted.
I'm the person that has a storage locker full of stuff from EDC 2017 when I was running the general store and camping gear there that I've been paying $400 a month to not have to deal with since 2017. Oof. I am not an adult, guys. Like, I'm an adult in like 1099 only. There's no other way that I am an adult. It's too bad. I'm an insider threat. Yeah. I think I'm the insider threat at my house. I think when I'm in the garage, like, how do we accumulate all this shit? It's me.
Yeah, I think they call that a segue, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it is a good segue. Yeah, we're going to be renting out the house that I'm in right now. So we have those same buckets of cables that we're going to have to go through in this house. Yeah. So what kind of we were thinking of topics for this segment, Rob and I, and what's his name, David. Yeah, we're doing some brainstorming and came up with this. I'm going to call it the bizarre case of St. Anthony Hospital and the hallucinating cyber CEO. That's what I'm going to call it.
That's good. I like that.
So just crazy case. So what we're going to focus on is the fact that this person was able to walk up to a PC in a hospital, write PowerShell malware from scratch at the terminal, and didn't do much damage because the hospital's physical security was pretty good, and several people.
Can I just make a suggestion? Do you want me to say allegedly after each individual sentence or each individual statement you make, or after the entire thing? Because from what I can gather, it is an ongoing
for the sake of time,
and allegedly,
for the sake of time, this is this is all evolving. It actually happened last August, but for whatever reason, one of the big questions here is the arrest warrant was only last month, was only in April. So I'm not sure what happened there, why they waited so long. To decide to prosecute this?
There are many questions, many questions. I mean, starting with why.
Yeah.
I mean, the how seems to be explained, but yeah, there's so many questions. But as I said, we don't know all the details. There are two sides to the story. There is the story that is out there, which is, CEO of a cybersecurity company got arrested, and there's his story, which is, hey, I wasn't arrested. I just woke up to a bunch of messages going, hey, are you arrested? So
he is so a lot of details here that I want to throw out, a lot of context, some of which comes from him, which I'm sure his lawyer probably didn't appreciate him going on LinkedIn and arguing his case with more randos on LinkedIn. But yeah, so he's a CEO in the sense that I'm a CEO. I got the impression that it was just a personal consulting company. But he did
Allegedly.
pen testing. He did DFIR. Sorry, what was that, Rob?
Allegedly.
Thank you. Keep throwing those in there.
I'm just looking after you here. I'm just looking after you, watching your back.
Yeah, and so the strange thing here is, so he claimed on LinkedIn, allegedly. Well, not allegedly. He claimed.
No, that was you don't need an allegedly on that. Yeah, I got you covered for allegedly.
He claimed he believed he was doing a pen test. And the reason, so he's got some mental health issues that, he says he had PTSD. He was being treated at this hospital for PTSD and claims malpractice. They use some hallucinogens to treat his.
I didn't read any of this. This is new information to me.
Yeah, so this is on the LinkedIn. He said they treated him without his consent with hallucinogens, and it's taken over the better part of a year to kind of get control of who he is, where he is, just general lucidity. And he said at the time when this happened, he believed he was having a paranoia episode, and he believed he was doing a pen test for the hospital.
I see.
Which makes sense because he documented everything. So on this LinkedIn post, he has smartphone photos of the PowerShell script he wrote. And
funnily enough, that smartphone photo of the PowerShell he wrote is very useful. I mean, first of all, it's really cool PowerShell.
Yeah.
It's also very much functional because I actually grabbed it from the smartphone picture that he took and basically built a Ducky script, which effectively does the same thing. It uploads screenshots of a machine to not his location, but our location in this case. So it's really, really good. It's very, very clever. And I have to say, to be able to do that with, I don't know, whatever going on was pretty impressive.
So tell us a bit more about what it did.
Just to be clear, though, it was a psychotropic, not a psychedelic, because I've done a lot of psychedelics and you can't even look at a phone screen or computer on psychedelics. It was a psychotropic. So this is more like prescribed psychiatric drugs. So SSRIs, there's a lot of different antidepressants, antipsychotics, things like that are psychotropics. So just not to bash psychedelics, because we don't want anybody to think that those will make you a better programmer.
Wasn't the mushrooms.
They won't.
Yeah.
It wasn't the mushroom.
But will they make you think that you're a better developer at the time?
Yeah, that's important.
So Rob, tell us a bit about what this PowerShell actually did.
It took us in the particular case, or in as it was implemented, it took a screenshot of the computer every, I think it was 20 minutes, and uploaded it to a location online. Now, as I said, we've taken it. I've basically given it to ChatGPT, and I said, I don't want every 20 minutes. I want every 1 minute. And instead of uploading there, can you upload it here? So we played around with it a little bit, but the fundamentals of it are that it takes a screenshot and uploads that screenshot to the interwebs. It was in a number of different locations described as malware. So if you literally Google cybersecurity CEO arrested, you'll probably see arrested for installing malware on a hospital's computer. I think one of the most interesting parts about this is that it wasn't malware. It was just PowerShell. And as I said, really well written and extremely effective PowerShell.
When he says he was worried about his own information, right? And so, like, his claim was that the reason that he did this is that he was concerned because of a previous attack on one of the hospitals in the hospital network he worked for. I guess when he was in the hospital, he's like, oh crap, I'm being treated by a hospital I work at. The information about my own stay is probably not confidential. He said that's one of the things that spurred him to do this. So I guess he thought he was writing a script to check and make sure his data was safe.
By
really
making
interesting.
everybody else's data not safe.
Yeah.
I mean, question the judgment there, the train of thought, but again,
Yeah.
who are we to judge? I mean, the other really interesting thing, apart from the fact that, as I said, it was just PowerShell, it wasn't malware, it wasn't something that was picked up, but the other really interesting thing was, I think he mentioned specifically that he did it on 2 computers, if I'm not much mistaken, one of which he just walked up to and wiggled the mouse on and had access to the computer. The other one, which had the username and password on a sticky note on the box.
Mm-hmm.
So and again, look, you have to have a huge amount of sympathy for healthcare professionals who realistically do want to be able to just walk up and sit down at the computer and do what they need to do. But equally, having your username and password stuck to the side of the box, or not having, a very simple screen lock after a period of time, do leave organizations very much open to this kind of thing happening.
Healthcare is a nightmare in general because I think the number of connected devices exploded. Very few of them actually talk to each other. They all have different requirements in terms of username and password and things like that. And, hospitals have tried to go to biometrics, but then if you've got scrubs on or you've got a mask or one of the surgical caps, they don't always work. So I actually am researching to do a summit on security in healthcare this fall, and just also the age of equipment that you deal with. Like a lot of the older community hospitals, they have like blood pressure machines that are 25, 30 years old. It's I imagine that you probably deal with this quite a bit just because of the nature of healthcare equipment.
Well, the other part of it is, I mean, obviously they're extremely high profile targets. They're extremely valuable targets because of the nature of the information that they have about people. But again, the interesting thing about this wasn't that it was some dude in Russia trying to hack into a hospital. It was literally some dude standing in the hospital.
Yeah, which is I think it's a threat vector that we don't consider as much because so 5 years of my career, I was chief incident handler for some large financial institutions, and no case I ever worked was public. So it's very underreported. This kind of like angry admin issue, employee walking up to a machine, that's outside what they should have access to. These kinds of things are generally dealt with by HR. I worked many cases with Secret Service, FBI, postal inspectors. None of those came out into the public, but they're mostly crimes and HR related issues. Kind of on that scale. So this is an issue that's burning time. Sometimes leads to legal cases and things like that. So it's absolutely something that's impacting organizations, but you don't see these headlines nearly as often.
Yeah.
No, I think it's probably the peculiarness of the situation that meant that it got people's attention somewhat. But as I said, I mean, every case realistically is an opportunity to learn. In this particular case, I think the big things are, well, number one, lock your damn computers. Number two, don't stick your passwords to the side of your computers if you can avoid it. Number three is you don't need malware to do malicious things. You can just use something that's sitting on everybody's computer already, which is PowerShell.
Yeah, live off the land. Yeah, and hardening systems. Did that system need PowerShell enabled? Or
Well,
one of them was customer facing, wasn't it? So one of those systems was customer facing.
One of them I believe was. But look, there's so many different layers to it. Did it need PowerShell at all? Realistically, probably not. Maybe it just needed it as system. So should it or could it just have been allowed for system and not allowed for randomer who sits down at the machine? okay, well, maybe you say, well, look, I need PowerShell. Well, does PowerShell need to reach out to random dude's random website where he can exfiltrate screenshots to? Well, probably not. So there's different levels and layers to, preventing something like this. But I mean, as I said, you can start at the very start, which is you shouldn't be able to just walk up to somebody's computer and do stuff.
Rob, or that anything on a hospital network should record any screenshot that is taken, because it's probably not a good idea to be taking screenshots in a hospital.
Yeah,
no. Very much not.
That's an issue. Yeah, and particularly sending it off. Rob, do you have any more details on how he was uploading screenshots? Was that like to a Google Drive or FTP or
Oh, no, that's a question. I don't know to hand, because all I have is our new and improved and threat-lockered version of this, which, as I said, uploads to our Google Drive location and does it more often, etc. So I don't actually have the original, which was his code. I think it was in the LinkedIn article. But I mean, fundamentally, it was just a location online. It was outside of their network. It was exfiltrating screenshots for all intents and purposes. Adrian's now live checking the code for us.
I am. Yeah, it was it was HTTP, not HTTPS. So port 80, and it was a post, an HTTP post is how he was getting it out.
You have to wonder how long it went on for, how it was found.
Yeah, well, so it sounded like it was minutes.
A year.
I think it was 20 minutes because staff saw him doing it, because that's one thing hospitals are pretty good at is physical security. When you've got essentially meth and all these drugs, like you got to keep an eye on things. You got to staff is very well trained to look for anybody touching anything they shouldn't be or in an area they shouldn't be. Typically I imagine it's tweakers they're looking out for, but the occasional cybersecurity CEO maybe as well. So another detail here, the Register covered it, and apparently this guy also had a company where he was selling something called Kratom, which is pitched as
a that's
legal
like gas
opioid,
station meth.
Legal opioid alternative.
Yeah, every time you see like a smoke shop that looks real sketchy, that's like the number 2 thing on the window that they sell. It's like whatever, and then Kratom. It's like the powder stuff that all the weird bros with the oversized fitted hats wear.
This is news to me.
I am learning many things today that I wasn't expecting to learn.
I worked in the music business.
Yeah, okay.
Sure you did, Jackie.
You know what? I have done surprisingly few substances for how long I spent, both in Wall Street and in the music business. No, but Kratom's like, it comes in like a package of powder, and you're like, anyway. Yeah,
well, I was going to say you seem to know a lot about this subject.
Well, you live in Florida. It's like fifth grade curriculum there.
Well, he wasn't there in 5th grade, Jackie.
Florida for long enough.
Yeah.
Nor have I got to 5th grade, thankfully.
Yeah, the term Florida man didn't come from nowhere, and I would guess that the Kratom consumption's higher there.
Yes, no, I'm aware of that, but didn't know it involved. What's it called? Kratom?
Kratom. It's Kratom. Yeah, I actually just saw this yesterday because I was driving past University of Arizona, and there's all these like sketchy smoke shops as you get a little bit further away from, and one of them in big letters, like Kratom on the side of it, and I was like, people still do that?
Rob is working on having an interesting search history in his browser.
Yes. I'm actually interested. If I go to any of these websites, it's probably going to get blocked by our web filtering, but hey.
Rob's about to get tagged as an insider threat.
I'm already tagged as an insider threat. Don't worry. I get 5 calls a day from our MDR guys. Hey, do you know this is going on your computer? And I'm like, yeah, that was me. Sorry. So, yeah.
So before we wrap up the conversation, rationale wise, despite, what this guy's motives might have been, and, if he was angry at the hospital, or legitimately having an episode, or maybe a mix of both.
All of the above.
It is very much a sabotage. Internal sabotage is not unknown. It's not talked about a whole lot, but one of my research projects is I catalog every company that's gone out of business due to a cyber incident. It doesn't happen often. They're all small businesses. I think the largest one on the list has maybe 500 employees, and that's kind of an outlier. But one of them was an Australian registrar called Distribute.it. And this was back in 2011, 2012, I think, when this happened. They're also a certificate authority and a hosting company. Those things you commonly see going together. And fired an employee, could never figure out how he was getting back in, but he would come in and just destroy infrastructure, just take down their infrastructure. And they rebuilt the entire environment twice. And then the third time he took everything down, they gave up, sold their assets off to one of their competitors and closed down the company. This is maybe a 40-person company, but still like a very influential company, managed a lot of Australia's domains at the time. And being a certificate authority, that's a pretty sensitive role as well. But the CEO tells that you can find a YouTube video online where he tells the story, and that story repeats itself. Not all of them are told online, but Only Honest and My Biz homepage are also examples where fired employees or angry employees decided to destroy the company and succeeded in doing that.
Yeah. There was an interesting, am I allowed to mention other podcasts?
Sure, yeah.
I'll come back to me which one it was now. Sorry, it was Darknet Diaries.
Really not that one. You can't mention that one.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. It's fine.
They had a really interesting one about I think it was an employee at a car dealership of some description. Again, fired basically, but discovered that they still had access to whatever system it was. But they were able to get in through this system and basically cause cars alarms to go off or horns to beep, basically. And he just log in and he set all the cars to horns to beep, and people would be bringing their cars going in. There's something wrong with my car. The horn keeps beeping, and they look at them. There's nothing. It took them quite some time to actually figure out who it was and what he was doing. Yeah. But there's so many different examples.
I worked at multiple SaaS startups where ex-engineers have DDoS attacked, ransomware, and when you think and again, if you can't find the back door, or even worse, if there's an account in your architecture that you don't know, and it's usually not a back door, it's usually a legitimate account that's hidden somewhere that they just keep logging back into. That's like a service account that's got lots of logins. So I've had had a CEO's home network ransomware. That was fun.
Wow.
Yeah, they managed to. They knew the CEO was using some development boxes at their house without the proper detection on them, so they ransomwared the CEO's house.
Dang.
I shouldn't giggle because it's not funny, but it was.
Kind of is, not really.
Yeah.
I had a really interesting conversation. I did a panel a couple of years ago now, actually, with I think it was in South Africa, and there's a lady who basically was involved with some sort of an educational institution. Now, it wasn't, massive, but she actually described to me, and it was something that only really occurred to me when she mentioned it. She was like, look, we obviously have to think about the thousands and thousands of hackers that are outside trying to get in and get access to our data. But we also have thousands and thousands of hackers on the inside who are the kids in the school who are basically trying to hack.
That's a very different environment. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's another example of where does insider threat stop? It's not always a disgruntled employee. It might be a disgruntled employee, but it also could be just somebody who is literally inside your network who has access to things they shouldn't have access to, or are trying to get access to things that they shouldn't have access to.
Well, and it's an interesting.
If that falls into the SEC's cybersecurity rules too, because I'm just thinking about this and if it's an employee, is it really material? And I feel like there's really easy ways.
I think materiality is all the SEC cares about, right? They don't care who or where the actor is. They care about impact that shareholders would be concerned about. But yeah, it's a very good point, Rob, that in a lot of organizations, you don't necessarily just have the insider as an employee, like one-to-one relationship. Like in some cases, you have customers that have additional access that a general public person doesn't, like patients in the hospital, right? Or students in a university or a classroom or something like that. So you've got these kind of varying levels of access that you have to account for. For different levels of insiders.
Yeah, and then to make things even more complicated, then you've got the whole supply chain thing as well.
Yeah,
partners, a lot of organizations have a lot of third parties who have access to parts of their infrastructure. So there's just layers and layers and layers of this. Not meaning to burst anyone's bubble or to ruin anyone's day, but.
Well, I mean, you'd be out of a job if there weren't layers, right?
Well,
yeah.
That's one of the great things about cybersecurity is every time a really bad cyber incident happens, you could be like, but job security.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually not really that, Jackie. It's when something big happens, it gets people's attention. And that's the thing that while obviously you're going, oh God, don't want this to happen, wish it didn't happen. The fact is, big important things. I mean, like the Colonial Pipeline thing a couple of years ago, that was all over the I don't know what nightly news it's called here. We call it 9 o'clock news back home, but that was all over the news for days. You know what I mean? So that really got people's attention, and I think it was actually in the aftermath of that, the government brought out the executive orders about zero trust and stuff like that. But because it basically got everybody's attention, got everybody talking about it, then actually something came out of it. But as you said earlier, Adrian, the problem is that most of these things don't get any attention. Yeah. And it's normally not heard of outside the company's walls that there's been some sort of an incident or an attack. So nobody's learning from them.
Yeah, I mean, it's an issue everywhere, and in politics as well. Like the things that get the most public attention are often not the things that are really need to be discussed or talked about or fixed. They're just because they make a lot of noise in the news. Squeaky wheels and all that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, Rob, thank you for joining us today. This was a very fun conversation. Good way.
Pleasure as always.
Good way to kick off our day. Big thanks to Jackie for joining us at 7 a.m. her time. Appreciate that. And stay tuned. When we come back, we have a topic segment for you. And we're going to discuss a trend we're seeing move away from cloud to more hybrid and edge computing models. And before I forget, make sure you visit securityweekly.com/Threatlocker to learn more about Threatlocker. This episode is sponsored by Fastly, the application security leader and edge cloud platform behind many top digital experiences. Fastly helps organizations deliver and secure online experiences for their end users through a modern, developer-friendly approach to security. With their next-gen WAF, bot management, and DDoS protections, teams have the tools they need to ensure their applications and APIs perform at their best without sacrificing speed or reliability. Discover how Fastly transforms security into an enabler for digital innovation at securityweekly.com/Fastly. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. And for this segment, we have a topic for you. And that topic, Jackie, this is something that you suggested here, a trend that you're seeing. So I'm going to hand it off to you here. And it's interesting to me. I'll just let you kick it off, and then I'll give my opinions. How about that?
Sure. So we're here today to talk about edging. And so I spent a week at Dell Technologies World a couple weeks ago, and when Michael Dell came out for the keynote the first day, he actually led with edge and hybrid computing, which I thought was really interesting because about 3 years ago, when I first started working at Cribble, they had this product called Edge, and it was basically just like a Linux agent, but it could do a lot of the data parsing and aggregations and things like that at the edge. And it made a lot of sense to me because I had just started to hear a lot of larger companies talk about over-rotating to the cloud, and I think for the last, 15 years, we've been telling everybody that everything was going to happen in the cloud and that someday none of us would have any like actual endpoints. We would all just have workstations.
Didn't happen. Yeah.
Nope. No. And I think there's a couple things going on that I thought were interesting. One is that we have now reached the point again, and this hasn't been the case in like 25 years, 30 years, where hardware is the limiting factor of technology, right? So we had that back when you and I were kids and we were building towers and we didn't have enough memory. And it's been software for years, and now we're back to hardware in that, my MacBook can't typically run an AI workload. So, Dell launched these new AI PCs, and they're kind of pushing people back to the edge. So I thought that'd be interesting to talk about because I want to see how the industry is like, guess what? We were wrong. But yeah, what are your thoughts? Do you do most of your workloads locally for intensive things, or are you still using
it's a total mix for me, so I actually I do another podcast outside this podcast that I do completely independently, and I use Riverside for all of it, same as we use for Security Weekly, and the editing tools are just good enough that I'm not tempted to buy a copy of Adobe Premiere or Final Cut or something like that. So for me, it's kind of a mix, and it's interesting for independent folks, for contractors, because there are a lot of tools out there that are priced for the SMB, for the individual, where you can do some pretty powerful stuff, both in the cloud and on your device. But I'd much rather be able to just take a laptop with me and do everything everywhere I go, so that's kind of the big factor for me is like last year I went to Brazil for a month and was able to do all the things that I do. And that wouldn't be the case if I needed to edit 4K videos or something like that. Or I would have just had to get a much beefier laptop, right? Something with a discrete GPU, with more memory, with more processing. But I find this interesting because when I was at 451 back in 2013, 2014, I remember 451 had its own conferences. And what you just described, Dell World, is it called?
Yeah, it's Dell Technologies World.
Yeah, it just sounds identical to the conference that we did back then. The keynote was the same. It was about hybrid cloud and then edge devices. Maybe 4 or 5 years later, there was a lot of talk about that, about edge computing. And I just find it interesting that there's kind of a resurgence here. And I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on, what's pushing this move? Like, is it just AI? Is it like we see a lot of people wanting to run models on-prem, that don't want to send all their data to Anthropic or OpenAI and things like that, or are there more reasons for doing this that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think when we were talking about this a couple days ago about this segment, I don't necessarily know that the cloud companies ever intended to pitch fully in the cloud. I think that kind of happened due to the economic model. So this whole model with the cloud companies where you buy credits and then you can burn them down, it's a lot easier to do that than to buy new endpoints, than to buy new GPUs, than to buy. So I think the procurement process of standing things up in the cloud is significantly simpler. And while I think hybrid was supposed to be kind of an on-ramp to the cloud, by the nature of how much easier it is to spin things up in the cloud, most organizations ended up completely cloud heavy with very little still happening on-prem. And I think it's understandable, but it's not something I think is ever the way things are supposed to go. And yeah, I think, working for a data pipeline company for the last couple of years at Cribble, one of the things we saw is a lot of companies are multi-cloud now. So now you're talking about, okay, so if I need to pull data from one cloud to another cloud to train it, I'm not only paying exfil costs on the first cloud, I'm paying ingestion costs on the second cloud, and I'm moving all this data for one purpose. And so I think a number of things. I've been pretty focused on mobile data centers. So Dell has these things. A number of companies have these things. They're basically like a little data center, a set of racks that goes in a Connex that you can pull up to your building. And I wonder how much more we're going to start using those for things like training. If you have to train, 10 petabytes of data, but you don't necessarily need to move that to the cloud or store it. I just think this is going to increasingly, as data sets grow, and the ingest-based pricing that a lot of tools use, it's going to continue to be a thing. And so the biggest issue I think we need to solve at the edge is resiliency and observability, right? Because if I'm in the middle of using my laptop to train an AI model and my laptop runs out of battery, it shits the bed, it crashes, like what do I have to mark where I was in that load? Or do I have to just start training this like 4-hour workload again?
Yeah, it's so yeah, I remember when Snowball came out, Amazon had this box that they would ship on-prem, so that you could do some of that stuff locally. It was basically their compute stack in a physical box with a Kindle e-reader screen on the front of it, which was interesting, an interesting thrifty reuse of technology there. And then I was at the reInvent where they drove the truck on stage, which was like the big Snowball, right? It was like petabyte level. Like you need to ship a lot of data to the cloud, but it's going to take 3 months with the size of your bandwidth, the size of your pipe to get it there. Hard drives were a quicker way to move that data. So they would literally ship a full-size 18-wheeler to the cloud and or to on your premise. You'd hook it up with 100 gigabit fiber and move stuff much quicker.
Well, and I think that the fiber you just mentioned, so the infrastructure turns out to be one of the limiting factors of AI as well, right? And so we've built data centers in as many places as we can, but there are only so many fiber trunks. There are only so many places where there's two different utility companies with two different megawatt feeds coming in. So yeah, I think this will continue to be an issue. We've reached the physical limitations of scaling AI. And I think for a lot of the other thing I think is that there was a misconception amongst companies that hardware is advancing really fast. And for a while that may have been true. NVIDIA had a new GPU every year. But for the most part now, I think companies can kind of accurately predict what they need for capacity. And I say that now, of course, there'll be some leap in AI that requires zettabytes of information that'll prove me wrong. But I think capacity planning has also been kind of a cluster for the last several years. And hopefully now, as companies really kind of define the AI use case they have and are going to focus on first, hopefully that'll help with, okay, I don't need to buy a new PC every 3 years. Because I think that's the other thing is that hardware is not a one-time investment. It's a continual cost sink. And even if the cloud is ultimately more expensive, I think the standard kind of the level cost of the cloud has kept people really hooked there, not having to buy large purchases of hardware every couple years.
Yeah. It's interesting. We see these shifts back and forth where, everybody said, forget efficiency for a while, right? We've got plenty of RAM, plenty of CPU, so we're just going to build this simple application on top of Electron. And then all your applications are built on Electron and all your RAM is gone. But yeah, now we're seeing a lot more specialization. So I think it'll be interesting now that it seems like we've kind of hit the peak of what some of these AI models can do. We see everybody moving into specialization, so agentic, instead of depending on one model to do everything and answer all our questions, we'll have a model for coding. We'll have a model for transcription. We'll have a model for, generating images and videos and things like that. And all these specialized smaller models. So it'll be interesting to see that as well, because we're already talking about shoving a large language or, maybe not large, right? Like medium and small language
SLMs,
models into a browser tab, onto your phone, in all these places where privacy becomes less of an issue and latency becomes less of an issue, because a lot of these things take a lot of time to come back and answer questions.
I hope we eventually get to distributed compute, because that was what blockchain was supposed to be. Is I have 45 AI PCs in my office, and if I need to execute a massive workload, can I shard that, have it on those PCs, regather it, and so fingers crossed that we can take the blockchain back from the crypto bros and use it for distributed compute.
Yeah, that'll be interesting also, and of course, security challenges there as well when you do that kind of thing. So that'll be interesting for security folks too. All right, Jackie, thank you so much for joining me today. So early out there. I hope you have a great day from this point on.
I'm going to go caffeinate so I can pretend to know things.
Nice. You've already succeeded in that today, pre-caffeination. So your day can only get better. All right, stick around for a few interviews from RSAC Conference 2025. And Jackie and I will be back next week, but from Las Vegas, from Identiverse 2025, doing some live interviews and doing the podcast there. Thanks for listening or watching. We'll see you then. Do your end users always, and I mean always, without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1password.
And we're back, day 3 of RSAC Conference 2025, broadcasting live from the CyberRisk TV booth in Broadcast Alley, which is Moscone West. I'm Paul Security Weekly co-host Jeff Mann, and joining me for this session is Yotam Segev. He's the CEO of a company called Cyera. Yotam, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. Excited to be here.
Yeah, first RSA?
Oh, no.
Several?
It's been a few.
How's the week been for you so far?
I think it's been pretty incredible for me personally, and I think in general for the industry. You look year over year, this is a nice checkpoint for the industry.
Right.
And it seems to be growing in an immense space. And I think for Cyera specifically, it's a checkpoint for me on the company and the progress we've made. It's very fun to look back where we were 3 years ago, 2 years ago, a year ago, and where we are today and where we hope to be next year.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into cybersecurity.
Sure. So I'm Yotam, I'm 34 years old. Been living in New York for 3 years now with my family. Originally from Israel.
Okay.
Did my first tour of duty in the States in the Boston area when my father was a tech CTO in a pre-dot-com bubble startup.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I got into cyber, we were talking about that before we came on the air here.
Yep.
So I think I got into cyber proper by joining the Israeli military to a program called Talpiot, which is Israel's elite tech leadership academy,
right,
and later serving in 8200 for a decade. But, when you look back at the roots, I got into cyber because I really didn't like to accept the limitations of what the software I was using had. So whether it was computer games or other software that I was using as a teenager,
right,
I always tried to play around behind the scenes and see how I can change the game, how I can change the characteristics of the game, and whether it was Little Fighter 2 or Neverwinter Nights or
so you
other
figured
games.
out you're a hacker.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way back then. I was just trying to play.
All right.
But I think that when it came into the military and became applicable for defending our country, it became very important to me.
Interesting. So, Cyera, how old is this company, and what made you decide to give it a start?
So Cyera is 4 years old.
Okay.
We started, first of all, out of friendship. My co-founder, our CTO, Tamar, is one of my best friends in life and one of the people that I love working with the most. And when he told me that he wants to do something together, I had no doubt that I want to be on board.
Okay.
And that was the first incentive. I think for us, data security was a challenge that we've experienced at the end of our service in 8200 as we were trying to adopt cloud technologies and really build our own business, in a sense, over cloud technologies. We realized that a lot of the approaches we've taken in the past to data security, locking the data up in a vault, detaching it from the internet,
Right.
these approaches are not going to work in this new cloud age.
Nope. Unfortunately not. I've actually been in this business longer than you've been alive, and I like to say it was really simple back then, because if you did have a secret, you did lock it in a safe.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a show that was on when I was working at the National Security Agency and just starting to do penetration testing and vulnerability assessment, because all of a sudden there was this thing called the internet that was kind of publicly available. There used to be a show on called X-Files. And I remember an episode where the premise of the show was some deep, dark secret had been leaked somehow because somebody had put it on the internet. And I'm like, who would ever do that? Yeah, this is so unrealistic. Boy, was I wrong.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you describe it as data security, because that's how we really started. And coming out of the DoD sort of national security military background, where the focus was on data, it was a very specific type of data. I've always felt like we never really captured the essence of data security in all this stuff that we're doing these days, because everybody decided, oh, we just have to secure all the networks and the systems and make everything impermeable, secure, and keep it secure. And what was transversing it and being stored was almost immaterial. Just secure everything. Hasn't really worked out too well. So it's refreshing to see a focus on the things that matter, which is data. And I'm glad you're seeing that as a young buck. But what are you doing about it? What's your approach to tackling this data security problem?
Yeah, so, if we look at that Vault story, and we start to tell a story around that. Right?
Okay.
Back in the day when data was kept physically on paper, we had to know what data we're trying to protect.
Right.
Then we had to physically place it within a safe environment, which was the vault, where nobody could access it without specific credentials.
Right.
Oftentimes there would be secondary controls around the room.
Right.
Maybe it was a campus that was hard to get access to in the first place.
Yep.
And that was our approach to keeping crown jewel information protected.
Right.
Fast forward to 2025, we live in a world where enterprises don't have a perimeter.
No.
Like there is no safe campus.
Nope.
Data is in the cloud. It's in the data analytics platforms like Snowflake and Databricks and MongoDB and so many others.
Right.
It's still on-premise in the databases and file shares. It's also on the endpoints, and it's moving faster than ever before. And that's even before AI agents came into the scene and started making that, an Olympic sprinter kind of pace.
Right.
So, that simple mentality of understanding what data is important and being able to put it in a safe place has been challenged by the scale of data, the pace of data, the velocity, and it's a completely new world we're living in. And in this world, just to be able to understand in a big enterprise what data we have, what data is sensitive, what data could, if it was leaked, make a bad weekend for us, and what data could, if it was leaked, make us go out of business.
Right.
Those distinctions are not easy to make. So the first thing Cyera is able to do and is doing for our customers is being able to differentiate between the data that matters and the data that clutters.
Okay.
And to do that at the incredible scale of hundreds of petabytes of data that enterprises today collect, generate, and store.
Are you coming up with your own categories, data classification? Are you relying on customers to know what they have, or is it sort of a give and take? Here's what we're seeing. Oh, that's this.
Yeah. So I think the best way to describe it is like you would a sensor.
Okay.
So we provide an objective description of the inventory, what exists out there. Sometimes it's very easy to infer the importance of the items you've inventoried, right? Like if there's a pile of cash sitting in the middle of the room, you know that that's valuable, right? Or if there's a huge diamond sitting there, you know that it's valuable.
Yep.
But sometimes you have to understand a lot more about that specific business in order to be able to understand the sensitivity of that data.
Right.
And usually the cybersecurity teams and organizations that do have sensitive intellectual property and data that is, let's call it, more unique and proprietary, they know what kinds of data are sensitive, but they're not able to actually identify where that data lives across the organization and validate that they have the right controls, whether it's access controls, DLP controls, encryption, regionality around that data. So we help them accomplish that. Sometimes they do need to add that business context of understanding the true sensitivity in their line of business.
Right. I mean, we both sort of, I was civilian, but we both have that military background where we're familiar with the levels of data classification, the top secret to confidential. In my years in the private sector, it's always bothered me that companies usually just slap on company proprietary and leave it at that.
Yep.
And you would understand, a battlefield command to launch an airstrike, or these days a drone strike, This has actually been in the news recently. Very sensitive information, perhaps, but only up to a certain point. I mean, once the bombs dropped, who cares that the coordinates were out there? So maybe that's top secret, but only for a day. Versus, we have some compromised information from someone that's been recruited, and I'm sure you're familiar with the methods and sources concept of how we got the data. That's the kind of stuff we take to our grave because we can never let that secret out. I've never seen organizations or this ecosystem that supports organizations come up with a really good method of data classification in a business context. Yep. Intuitively, people know payroll sensitive, PII is sensitive. We have regulatory compliance requirements to tell us to some degree what's sensitive. But it's different in context for every organization, isn't it?
Context is exactly the right word there.
Okay.
So when we inspect data, we do it in a much more multidimensional aspect than the way you would think about classification historically.
Sure.
Classification historically, 1 to 4, how sensitive is it? Right? Very, very simple. Then you've got the next phase of classification. What is the data? We call that classification as well.
Yep.
But when we look at it today at Cyera, using AI in order to provide this type of capability, we can go so many layers deeper on what is the data. We can go and try to understand whose data is it. Is it a specific business partner of mine? Is it my customers' data, my employees' data? And that context is crucial. We can go and understand if that data is real or it's synthetic. You might have personal information that was generated by some web application for testing, and that's sitting in a dev environment, and that's completely fine. Or you might have a dump of your production database that's been taken to your dev environment, and that's not fine.
Right.
How do you differentiate between the two? So when we talk about data classification at Cyera, we talk about contextualized data classification that goes in and tries to infer all of these further dimensions. We do that automatically. That's the strength of the platform, that we're leveraging AI in order to give that deep visibility into data. And that context makes it much more actionable, makes it possible for the security practitioners to build the bridge to the business and, in a sense, democratize the data risk. Because at the end of the day, these big enterprises, there's a lot of people on the corporate side, there's a lot of developers on the application side, there's a lot of data scientists on the analytics side. The security team can't go chasing, playing whack-a-mole, all of these issues. They have to be able to make the business take ownership of the risk, take accountability for the risk, and drive the remediation and mitigation of the risk. And that's what the Cyera platform is allowing our customers to do. Really, democratize data risk to the business and continuously improve the posture over time.
Gotcha. So how are you collecting the data? How are you finding all the data without giving out the secret sauce?
Yeah. So when we started, the why now was cloud. Right? Enterprises had their garage. That garage had 4 walls.
Right.
Right? It was, maybe we didn't know exactly what's in what box, but it was all in our garage. And with the move to the cloud, the feeling, right? Like, it's first of all an emotion of loss of control just grew exponentially, right? I know I'm in AWS, I know I'm in Azure. The data scientists came in a few days ago, said they want to use Snowflake. I'm not even 100% sure what Snowflake is, but I'm going to have to allow them to use it and find some way to protect the data in it. My SharePoint is sprawling with data and permissions. I have no way to get my hands around it. And all of this is happening at the same time that every regulator on the planet is telling me that I need to have better control over data than ever before. How does this align? So that was the first sentiment that really led us to double down on this discovery and classification issue, the core of DSPM. And what we've done is we've built an agentless data discovery engine that is able to connect just over the API to the underlying cloud provider, be it AWS, Snowflake, SharePoint, whatever it is. And from that single point of integration, continuous discovery of all the data stores inside as they're spun up, as they're spun down, as they appear, and the ability to read the data inside, structured, unstructured, and analyze the posture. What that allows us to do is create an always-on data sensor that actually gives the customers, almost near real-time picture of what data exists in their environment and what has changed. So if PII is introduced for the first time into a new cloud account, you want to know about that. And if data has now traversed borders and European PII has made it into the US, you want to know about it. And if intellectual property that only was accessible to a very limited set of people has been made public in a bucket or in some other instrument, those are the things that we're finding for our customers and helping them identify. Of course, also a lot of data that they've collected over the years that they just don't want to have. It has a lot of liability and risk associated with it, and without the right glasses on, they were unable to see it.
Gotcha. So, and I imagine you have some sort of method of characterizing or cataloging or tagging all of this data to help with the classification and identification.
It would have been super sexy to say that there's one AI algorithm that has solved this problem completely, but that's not the truth.
You haven't asked AI to give it to you yet?
It hasn't. We've asked.
It hasn't come out yet. Okay.
I think that the data classification engine, the AI native data classification engine, is one of our core intellectual property pillars. It's the core technology of Cyera. I'd like to say that we want to be the best sensor for data in the world. Today, we're focused on being that sensor for the security use cases.
Right.
But in the future, as the company grows, we can see us opening up that sensor to other stakeholders in the enterprise, the chief data officer, the chief AI officer, different stakeholders that also want to understand the data. But it's a work of engineering. There's a lot of machine learning, NLP, LLMs involved. But at the end of the day, it's just a lot of engineering.
Right.
So I always tell my customers, data classification is my problem. If I need to hire 500 data scientists in order to solve it, I'll go find the funding to do that. I want to give you that as a service where you don't have to worry about it. And that's fully understanding that there's unique data in every enterprise and sometimes in specific business units within the enterprise that we've never seen before, that no other company has. And this algorithm has to be able to learn that data automatically and be able to show it in a way that an analyst can consume.
So we're about out of time, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask one final question. You claim to be the fastest growing data security company in history. How are you making that claim?
So, we're a private company, so some of the financials I'll keep to ourselves. But, a 4-year-old company that's grown from 2 founders to 650 people today, that tells you something. A company that's grown in 4 years to $3 billion valuation, $760 million raised. I think that says a lot.
So you're tapping into something, you're scratching the itch of something, you're solving a problem that people are seeing.
Definitely.
Great. Well, that's about all the time we have for. If you want to learn more information about Cyera, go to securityweekly.com/Cyera, which is CYERA, followed by RSAC. And for information about our program of broadcasting here, that's securityweekly.com/RSAC. We'll be back in a few minutes with the next exciting episode. Again, Yotam, thanks for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
We're back at RSAC Conference 2025, broadcasting live from the CyberRisk TV booth at Broadcast Alley in Moscone West. We're on the final lap here, getting ready to shut this whole thing down. The foot traffic is slowing down. People are starting to head to the airport. People are staggering along that walk of shame from having gone to one too many parties last night. But we're gonna get through this.
We are.
I am the co-host of Paul Security Weekly, Jeff Mann, and I'm here today, this session, to talk to Matthew Warner, who's the CEO and co-founder of a company called Blumira.
I am.
Matt, welcome.
I'm excited to be here.
How are you holding up from this week?
I'm doing well. Doing well.
Pacing yourself well?
Well, I wouldn't say pacing myself. I've been recovering since Monday still, but here I am. I'm doing well.
You're one of those, oops, I did a little bit too much on the first night?
Yeah.
I learned that lesson a few years ago.
I never learned my lesson, apparently.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into cyber.
Sure, yeah. So I've been in IT and cyber for about 20 years, primarily in either, MSPs or doing my own startups. Blumira actually came from me working through an MSP, building out their SOC services, and just being sick of trying to make Elasticsearch work for us.
Gotcha.
It was just too much work for an MSP to really drive forward. Everyone was getting up at night having to fix stuff, and it just really wasn't worth it to the MSP.
Right.
And I was one of those crazy people that said, you know what we could do? Rebuild everything. And that's what we did.
We can make it better.
We can
stronger,
make it better. Exactly. Faster. Yes. So that's what we did. We spun out of that MSP, started Blumira about 7 years ago.
Right.
And for me, I've been a SOC operator running MSPs in IT for a long time. And if I know anything, it's that you got to build stuff so people can still sleep at night.
Right.
And got to reduce that paging on call. Like, that is my goal. It always has been my goal. And when we started Blumira, our motto was, we don't want to wake up at night. And that is our motto that's continued through to all of our customers as well. So we are here really to help.
This is not just a random
piece of
swag. There's a subliminal message.
Yes. Everyone should sleep more, especially at RSA. Not that I took my own guidance here, but I'm just saying, it's important.
But it was a choice.
It was a choice. Exactly.
That's an important distinction.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So you started Blumira. You think you can make it better, stronger, faster?
Yes.
And other than doing that, why did you do that? Who are you trying to reach?
Sure, yeah. So, 2018, this was before the crazy boom in some regard for where things went during COVID and security. Right. And as we've continued to move through, I think a lot of us see that, thinking back 5, 10, 20 years ago, the SMB, mid-market, and MSPs and MSSPs have always been left behind by security technology.
Right.
Realistically, almost no one makes technology for them, or they make it for a weird segment within that, and it really isn't supporting them in their growth. Right. The way we really like to look at this, and we have since the beginning, is that an organization that grows their security maturity, an MSP that can grow their security maturity and grow the maturity of their customers, will be more secure over time, will be better as an organization, and will just operationally be better.
Right.
It's something that it's really easy to miss in security, that if you are doing security well as an MSP, as an organization, you will be healthier because you're following those processes. You're putting in that work. You know what's happening in your organization. So we've built Blumira really to focus into how can we help people get better? How can we help the people that work at that MSP really be able to deliver the service that's best for them and their customers?
Right.
And how do we make sure that everyone is secure? We see that everywhere on the floor AI this year.
Right.
And we are, of course, like everyone is working on AI. But really the way that we look at that is, you can't remove the tier 1 of security. You have to provide AI that makes people better and really aligns to what the human needs. We cannot kill the tier 1 and the entry level of cybersecurity. What will we do in 5 years, 10 years? Who is going to take those jobs?
Right.
AI does not make security. The people who build it do.
Right. Well, and for all the hype of AI, and I've had several discussions of really passionate, geeky people that are into it, that are like, this is game changing. This is not quite the Black Obelisk 2001 moment, but, more along the invention of the steam engine type of moment where, we're shifting to a new age. And I get that, but it's still a tool.
Yep.
And it's still got to be utilized
by people.
Wielded well.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all we need to say about AI.
Yes.
So let's talk about how there's this neglected, underserved segment of society, which is the small, medium-sized business, which, I've been a PCI QSA for 20 years. And in theory, I only work with the big guys, the big merchants and retailers and service providers. But that's like 1% of the companies out there. And, most of what's going on over here at the chaos that's the expo floor is everybody's going after the enterprise. Everybody's the whale hunting.
Yep.
And what's left for the little guy? And it necessarily has to be organizations that can pull together the expertise and lend themselves to the many.
Yep.
So I sincerely appreciate that you have a vision for that and do that, and
I appreciate that.
Can't help but try to promote it as much as possible. I mentioned PCI. I imagine you stumble upon that every once in a while.
Oh yeah.
And the new requirements and the in its own way kind of game-changing way that they've actually updated finally version 4, a lot of the language and a lot of the requirements, because people couldn't read it and translate it to modern technology. They actually had to put the words in.
Yep.
But clearly has a big impact on MSPs that are trying to, they're the ones that are receiving all the outsourced from the merchants. We've got a third party that does it. Out of curiosity, are you guys PCI compliant yourselves?
We actually were PCI compliant for a number of years. We moved away from PCI compliance about 1.5 years ago to focus more on SOC 2.
Okay.
That's something we could pick back up. We don't see actually well, internally, we don't try to hold any card data, as you can imagine. We don't want to be a service provider when it comes to that. But when it comes down to how we provide PCI support and how we align to PCI, it's really the big changes we've seen with 4 have really been an expansion in the logs that people are required to collect and view.
Right.
I know a big change for a lot of our customers was that they had to start collecting their door logs, and they had to start collecting how people are actually accessing the scoped areas. A lot of our customers never thought about that before.
Right.
And really more importantly, a lot of that technology is from the early 90s, if not later than that.
Right.
So it really became this interesting challenge of how do we support SMBs and the technology they invested in 10, 20 years ago and actually make it something that meets the compliance standards of PCI, pull that data into Blumira and really give them the visibility they need.
Right.
And a lot of what we hear across the SMB, to your point, is that they really aren't able to get the visibility they need across the tool sets that are available to them.
Right.
It's really easy in the SMB to assume that the SMB needs a black box and just needs to do it for them.
Right.
But in my experience, what people need is something that they can really sink their teeth into.
Right.
It shouldn't be hard. It should make their lives easier, but it does need to expose that ability for them to meet PCI through reports already being available to them, making sure they're getting the log data they need, making sure they're getting the visibility and alerts they need to really ensure that when they go into that SAC, they are answering the questions the right way and they're seeing the
it needs to check the box. But
Right.
I mean, I've always tried to push my clients towards, don't just check the box.
do more.
Actually embrace it and understand the
Right.
context of why this is important and why it matters and why it should matter to you. I'm sorry for doing the shameless sales pitch on air, but I am a QSA.
Yeah.
I work for a QSA company, and you guys fall into this kind of weird
We do.
in between category. But anybody that's a security provider and an MSSP, you're not touching the card data, but you're adjacent.
They are.
PCI
They have access.
has this, or could impact the
Yep.
security of card data, which I have a lot of customers that sort of fit into that nebulous category, and some fully embrace, we definitely fit squarely into that, so we're
Yep.
going to be PCI compliant, so that if for no other reason they can answer the question when they're trying to sell their services.
Sure.
Of course we're PCI compliant, so we'll talk later.
Oh, yeah.
But but even in version 4, there's been logging requirements from the very beginning,
Oh, yeah.
centralized logging,
Yep.
daily log review. Now
Those are my favorite.
Now it's required to be automated.
Correct.
And
Oh, no.
I
She
made
fell
an
over.
emphatic point. I'm sorry.
You're too excited. Here we go.
All right,
I
you
got
hold it while
We
I'm
got
talking.
All right, I'll hold it. There we go.
We'll
Perfect.
take turns.
Love it. Oh, here we go. We'll hold it together.
But that's got to help you guys.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
in that context, what do you do to help? You're providing the
Right.
services for your clients. Do you try to help provide context and we're giving you information, this is what you do with it, this is what you should care about, type of thing?
Yeah, so that's really the biggest thing with SMB. You have to provide context. Will it stay? Will it stay? We good.
All right, don't touch the
We
ticket.
got it. We got it. So for us and for SMB, you have to provide that context. It doesn't
Right.
matter if it's a detection. It doesn't matter if it's a piece of data. You have to provide context because realistically, most people in SMB are IT focused, not security focused, and they're getting pulled into that compliance work in a situation where they are not experts on compliance.
Right.
Very few people are QSAs.
Yep.
And it's important for...
And even fewer good QSAs.
Yes.
Did I say that out
That
loud?
is very accurate. Very, very accurate. Yes.
Right.
So it's important to provide that context for them so they know, and then they go into that process. And we provide as much support as we can. We have our own security operations center and support center that provides them that kind of like, if you want to talk about your compliance, let's talk about it.
Right.
Like, let's make sure you get what you need. If it's PCI, if it's SOC 2, if it's CMMC, if it's ISO, like, you're going to have complexities. Let us help you solve those for you.
Right.
That's really how, as Blumira, we don't provide services. We don't believe that services are how it should work. Instead, it's just something that's part of the product. If
Right.
you need help, you just reach out. We're going to help you.
Right. Yeah, fair. Or, do you have partners that you can refer
Yeah.
people to when they do
And
need
that's
to
what the
talk
MSPs
to
are
somebody?
for. Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, we want MSPs to grow. We want MSPs to thrive. And the way to do that is for us not to be a competitor to the MSPs, but rather enable them to drive their services.
Right. And with the focus being on, we actually want to help.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and we want you guys to be secure.
Yeah.
It's always, I've always chuckled, especially in this environment, when I bring up PCI, people chuckle and say, oh yeah, every merchant that's ever been breached, they claim to be PCI compliant. And I'm like, yeah, and there's this whole major requirement in PCI, which you squarely play in, which is collecting all the logs, collecting all the evidence, doing the detection and response, because even PCI assumes there's going to be a breach and a compromise.
Of course,
so be prepared for it.
Yeah.
So you can be breached and be compliant. Magical.
Yes, I mean, I would hopefully one day the world will realize that compliance never aligns to you won't be breached. There is no situation where you are secure enough to never be breached. It is just not how it would be great if it worked that way. I don't care how great AI gets, it'll never be that way. It's just,
I've been triggered lately by the compliance does not equal security idiom, to which I always respond, security does not equal security.
No, it doesn't.
That usually shuts them up. But but also compliance, and I would ask your opinion on this, but I think compliance in many cases is security, because that's all a lot of organizations going to do, especially the small ones.
Yes.
So I think there needs to be an attitude adjustment for those that care to understand that compliance is sort of the boundaries that you're working in. That's what those are the cards you've been dealt with.
Yeah, very much so.
And let's make it work within that context.
Well, I think you're also seeing that delineation between enterprise and everyone else, right? At enterprise, it may just be a bother because you're going to have your governance team. They're going to be telling your security team to do stuff, your IT team to do stuff.
Right.
In the SMB world and MSP world, you do not have a governance team in a lot of cases. You have your security and IT team that are going to be applying those controls, and you're exactly right. Those are going to be the controls you're following.
Right.
And it's important to live those controls and really make sure that that is aligning to where you are, because compliance drives the security operations, that drives the security, and all of those have to be aligned in a way that makes you moderately healthy as a company, and you will just as likely to be breached as someone who is not.
Right.
But you will identify it, you will stop it sooner, you won't be as bad, and that's the intention of a lot of these
That's
frameworks.
the key. I remember back when the Target breach happened, and shortly after the Home Depot, there was a spate of big breaches back then. And I remember reading one headline. I don't even remember who the merchant was, but the headline was they were breached, and they detected it within like hours or days. Oh, and this was this company, they've been breached. I'm like, that's a success story. The fact that they were able to detect it and minimize the damage,
100%.
that's really realistically the goal here.
It is. It is the goal.
Our time's winding down. If I could shift gears, one of my good friends works for you, Amanda Berlin.
Yes, she's amazing.
Shout out to Amanda.
Hey, Amanda.
And one of the things I also appreciate about Blumira is the fact you have somebody like Amanda working for you, and you promote what she does. Take a few seconds to tell us about what her focus is on her little side project.
Sure, yeah. So Amanda runs a group called Mental Health Hackers, a nonprofit. They focus entirely on mental health for people in the cybersecurity industry.
Especially SOC analysts.
Especially SOC analysts.
Yeah.
Amanda I hired her as a SOC analyst at the MSP, where we realized, this is hell, we should do something else.
Right.
So I've worked with Amanda for many years, and her focus has always been, how do we make sure that people are happy in their roles in security? Right. Security is so hard to stay content in a long time, especially as a SOC analyst. The impact from the standpoint of time, having to stay up, having to evaluate. Then if you get breached, just the mental impact of having to recover from a breach is significant.
Right.
So her Mental Health Hackers program has done a spectacular job kind of growing that need. I know she got a big room at DEF CON this year, so she'll be there this year. Please, everyone, check out Mental Health Hackers, donate. I know she needs some donations. So if you're looking for a good nonprofit to donate to, Mental Health Hackers is out here to support the SOC, to support the security people, and Amanda Berlin's one of the best people you ever meet, so that it helps her too.
So I appreciate how you back up not only the commitment to the small and underserved organizations out there, but the people that have to support the small and underserved organizations.
We got to all still be here. We got to make it through. If we all burn out, there's no one left. It's important for us to do that.
And we have to pace ourselves.
We should. Well, yeah, we should.
What would Amanda say? Well, that's going to wrap us for this time. Appreciate the time talking to you today.
I appreciate the time as well.
If you guys want to learn more about Blumira, go to securityweekly.com/Blumira, which is BLUMIRA.
That's us. There you go.
RSAC.
There you go.
And we're winding down, but if you want to learn about our whole program here, that's securityweekly.com/RSAC. Thanks again, Matt, for talking
Thank
to
you.
us today.